Like they're good to go. Let's get down to our match. Josh Utter-Leyton with the Pyro Ascendancy deck. I'm open to suggestions on the names. That was the best I could come up with in a couple minutes of thinking about it. Against Paul Cheon, who is not on Splinter Twin, despite signaling Splinter Twin in every social media outlet I saw. He's on Grixis Delver.
Yeah. I like the Delver decks in Modern. I've always liked them. I liked them before Treasure Cruise. Definitely liked them when Treasure Cruise was legal. And even after Treasure Cruise, I think there's some interesting stuff going on.
It feels like they disappeared after Treasure Cruise got banned. Like there weren't any at the last Pro Tour, but then recently on Magic Online in particular, the Grixis build of the deck seems to have emerged as the right way to play it.
You see this happen a lot, actually. It's kind of like how Pod, once Pod got banned, the whole Malira like combo mid-range deck disappeared, but then people were able to eventually find a new build. When the linchpin of a deck leaves, that deck usually fades until people kind of adjust for that. And I think people have adjusted with Delver. Plus, it picked up Tasigur and Gurmag Angler, which are actually cards.
Gurmag Angler, there he is. Yeah, no, Gurmag Angler is a legit thing. I think it may only be a one-of in this list, but
yeah,
it makes the
three
cut.
Tasigurs and one Angler.
Yeah.
If Tasigur wasn't legendary, I imagine it would be more Tasigurs. But yeah, I think having the Angler helps.
That had to be a fun moment for Paul Cheon, right? Casting a Gitaxian Probe right there.
Yeah.
He probably thinks he's playing against Storm, but then what is the blue-white land doing in there if it's a Storm deck, right?
Yeah, I think that Paul actually got there as well. He actually hit perfect. He probed into probe, which makes his delve better, and then he hit fetch land so he could play turn 1 Delver. His Sulfur Falls comes to land tap, and he's actually very close to casting his delve cards.
Wow.
It's actually very impressive.
I didn't even notice that it was Sulfur Falls in his initial hand, so that he wouldn't even have been able to play the Delver on the first.
His turn 1 play was tap land go. Instead, it was Delver, potentially flip it now, and then if he draws another fetch land, he could just play turn 2 Tasigur.
No. Draws a Delver. That neither flips nor turns on Delve.
No, that's not super exciting. I do think that Delver is good in this particular matchup. It's just a cheap threat that can attack. You want to leave your mana up because you do need to start disrupting your opponent. Paul did choose not to leave Spell Snare up against an Ascension, which is interesting.
Yeah, he saw it with the Gitaxian Probe.
Yeah, presumably he thinks he can outrace the Ascension with his, now 2 Delvers. Now he's leaving Spell Snare up instead of playing Young Pyromancer, also because Delver does hit harder in the short term, especially assuming you flip.
Now, Josh had no doubles until that Metamorphose.
Yeah, but the first Metamorphose is almost assuredly going to get Spell Snared.
Right.
Josh is still in pretty good shape. If Paul flips these Delvers, it could be a fast clock, but if Paul misses for another turn on the Delvers, it might be that Josh just has enough time here. Though Josh doesn't have an Ascendancy. He doesn't have a way to get Fate Stitcher into the graveyard, and if you have to cast Fate Stitcher, it's pretty miserable.
All right, he's going to go for a Metamorphose here. This has got to get Spell Snared, right?
I would assume so. I mean, there's no reason. You left Spell Snare up. You pretty much have to at this point.
Right. So next turn, Josh's Metamorphose will give him a counter. Doesn't have an obvious way to get a second counter yet, and needs the Ascendancy, but he's close.
This is a big flip here, or a big upkeep. It looks like the Delvers are not flipping, so yep. That adds, basically a turn to Josh's clock, and potentially more. If every turn the Delvers don't flip, it's 4 damage, and Josh is still at 19, only going to 17 now. Josh could be as low as 10 if the Delvers had flipped it in the right order.
Now, do you just Gurmag Angler or Tasigur here?
I would just Angler. You're not gonna ever activate Tasigur, and Angler just hits for more damage.
Yeah.
Josh apparently made a little Paul. It's one of Paul's emoticons from his stream, and Josh just put it on his cursor, and then now is just dragging it around his screen. That is great.
Of course he is.
I feel like it was a real innovation, and once all the players realized that if they dangle something over to hand cams, then it'll come up on the stream. Because Owen likes typing messages, Josh likes throwing out the Pauls, so that is good.
All right, here's the second Metamorphose. So the first counter on the Ascension, which Ascension is, he can't go off with just the Ascension. Ascension's kind of a value card in this deck.
No, but it is a really good value card. Josh
Agreed.
he's getting close. Josh actually could just go land cast Fate Stitcher here.
Oh, well, off.
That off the Simeon Spirit Guide. That does seem like the play.
Well, he's got 2 floating for the Manamorphose. He doesn't even need the Spirit Guide.
Oh yeah, he even gets to play land and just cast it. So
Crazy. He can block Delver of Secrets. That's the plan, right?
yeah. So if Paul can flip here, Josh basically has one turn to go off. Electrolyze can't stop,
Well, we
and
are
the
flipping.
Delvers do flip. Electrolyze can't stop the Fate Stitcher. If Paul could use both of these spells, maybe that would do something. But as is, he's going to hit Josh down to 11. He can kill the Fate Stitcher, but then it just comes back. So, I mean, Josh is not in good shape though. Josh needs to find a. I would say he wants to start by finding a card that will flip Pyromancer Ascension or activate Pyromancer Ascension. Then he can play Probe for 2 cards, and then maybe find Ascendancy plus a spell. It is tough. If he just draws Ascendancy right away, that is probably his best shot.
Agreed. Now, if you kill Fate Stitcher, just make Josh pay a mana to get it?
You can do that. Like I said, it doesn't change all that much. I mean, you can terminate, as people are saying, you can in the chat, you can terminate to stop it from like attacking you with Ascendancy. But
ooh, speaking of,
all right, that's the card Josh wanted. I mean, he's going to lead by playing Ascendancy and then playing Gitaxian Probe. He has to hit off the Probe plus Ascendancy draw.
well, he can also unearth Fate Stitcher before he plays the Probe.
Yeah, he's going to do that just because that starts generating mana. But he's going to be out of card draw spells if he doesn't draw. He's got 2 draws to draw card draw spells. But with an Ascendancy in play already, I mean that is clearly Josh's best draw. Then Josh is going to be able to cycle through without running out of mana.
All right. This Gitaxian Probe needs to find another cantrip. Preferably one that hits Ascension. But with the Ascendancy, it basically just needs, land. That's not a great start. The draw from the Probe is...
I mean, this is the whole game right here.
Oh, he hit land.
Yeah, and that will do it. Josh can't go any further, and Paul has lethal out, plus Electrolyze just in case. And
that's kind of a bad beat, right? Land.
Yeah, I think that Josh was probably slightly favored there. I mean, he does not have tons of lands in his deck, so he's got looking at Josh's deck list, he's 19 lands in his deck, and
already had 4 of them in play.
He had 26 instants or sorceries, plus the 8 enchantments that with 2 Fate Stitchers, even a Pyromancer Ascension gives him another crack by drawing off a Ascendancy.
Wow.
So leaving up Terminate doesn't stop you from dying to Ascendancy. Anytime Josh goes off enough to kill you, he'll just get another Fate Stitcher and play and attack you with 2 of them. So in general, the ways to beat these decks is not to leave up removal.
Agreed. Yeah, and Paul played it to put the fastest clock he could. He got a little bit unlucky to go 0 for the first 2 Delver flips. Josh almost stitched it together on that last turn, but came up a little short. Now here's Paul's list. We haven't seen
stitched it together
on camera yet, although I know the link is floating around the chat right now.
Yeah, so this is
straightforward as Grixis Delver lists go.
And using the card Paulo was just completely befuddled by. He was like, why is everyone playing Kolagon's Command in Modern? He just in every single deck now.
It's good, right?
It's a good card. It doesn't. It's funny when these kind of cards get played in high-powered formats. It doesn't do anything all that well, but it does enough things exactly well enough to see play.
Sounds right. Does sideboarding do anything to the matchup here? Is Paul gonna like Blood Moon him?
Paul's gonna get better. Blood Moon I would not imagine, but he does get negate, flash freeze, dispel, thought seizes, potentially engineered explosives. That seems not that great. And Josh gets concentrate maybe or Swan Song, but that's not the sort of thing you want against the Delver deck. The Delver deck is not the kind of deck you want to play against. In basically the history of Magic, the combo decks playing against the decks with 1-drops, the fish decks, the decks with the 1-drops and counter spells is generally not where you want to be.
Fair enough. Quick update, by the way, Owen has taken the first game from Andrew Cuneo. That matchup was trying to remember.
It's Red-Green Tron against Jeskai Control.
Right. Andrew showed up with a controlled deck that looked kind of true to his roots. Owen showed up with 4 Karns and 4 Ugins.
Yeah.
And an Emrakul and an Ulamog and 4 Wormcoil Engines.
And as someone who's played a lot of the Jeskai deck that Andrew's playing are very similar lists, you don't really love playing against Tron. You have some decent sideboard cards against them, but you just don't kill fast enough. They get their mana and they just start dropping these spells. You don't have infinite, cryptic commands.
And Owen does apparently have infinite threats.
Yeah, he's got
That's
so many threats.
that's insane. They're like 14 bombs. I mean, I've seen these lists run as few as like 7 or 8.
Yeah. Usually they have, more like all his dust type Oblivion Stone stuff if they have that, but instead,
Oh,
just
that's
has
what he's missing.
more
I was trying
action.
to no, I
Yeah.
didn't. Yeah, he's just 0 for Oblivion Stones. He just has 4 Ugins instead of
Well, it
anything.
looks great. Looks great in this matchup.
Oh, here's Thoughtseize.
Yeah, and this is why, Paul's like got the perfect hand to fight against Josh's deck here. Thoughtseize into Pyromancer into Serum Vision's Thoughtseize is just a great start. Paul expended very few cards in mana, and it's going to make Josh's deck operate a lot more poorly. Once you take Ascendancy out of Josh's hand, which is what Paul's certainly going to do,
Yep.
Josh is in the spot where he just has to cast like Faithless Lootings to try to get back into it. Though Faithless Looting, discarding Fate Stitcher, and then cycling Niveus Wisps, not a bad way to go.
Can't actually cycle Niveus Wisp until there's a target, right?
Yeah, but presumably Josh is going to, or Paul's going to play the Young Pyromancer turn
Sure.
two. Though Josh did draw Serum Vision, so you might as well just do that instead. And here you see playing your fetch land and cracking it, because you don't want to Serum Vision to leave 2 on top, draw 1 next turn, and then have a good card on top and another fetch land. So that kind of sequencing is important.
Basic island. Sees an Ascendancy and a Steam Fence.
Yeah, and unsurprisingly keeping the Ascendancy, but if I'm Paul, I'm just dropping the Pyromancer here. You really want to get a clock out. Paul not afraid of taking damage here because first of all he's got Deprive in hand, so triple blue is not a bad thing for him to have.
Oh, Ascension, not Ascendancy.
Ascension's still good. You're still worth keeping at this point in the game, but that Pyromancer's a quick clock, especially since Paul has Thoughtseize plus Deprive here.
Ooh.
Though it is funny if Paul Thoughtseizes and Josh casts Wisps and Bricks, then the Thoughtseize misses. And I see the mouse cursor has changed to the Lucky Cheon emote.
Yeah, you cycle here, right? Now, are you hoping to hit or miss? I guess
for sure. You're hoping to hit Faithless Looting.
Faithless Looting or Fate Stitcher, even.
Yeah, any of those things. Oh, nice Thoughtseize, sucker.
I made an Elemental. And now, do you Serum Visions if you're Paul, or leave up Deprive against the top?
I would leave up Deprive. If Josh peels like an Ascendancy, it is fairly bad for you. Though you do have to imagine Josh is going to flashback Faithless Looting next turn. You might actually Deprive that. It is a draw 2. Josh has 2, more than 2 bricks in his hand.
Yep.
Oh well. There's the Ascendancy, which you do want to cast before the looting. So I mean, it's not going to be a hard call for Paul.
Yeah. Yeah, instantly sacks his land. That is what Deprive was up for.
Depriving Josh of an Ascendancy and a pretty good and a shot to win this game. I mean, Josh is still in it, but he does not have a lot of time. If Paul can find one more piece of disruption, I think this game, this game is going to be tough for Josh to win.
Yes. Yeah, Josh said he didn't want to play against Thoughtseize decks. He didn't even consider that Paul would be on Thoughtseize and Permission.
Right. I mean, I'm not saying it's an awful matchup for Josh because I don't believe it is, but a quick clock plus counterspells plus Thoughtseize is, I mean, it does add up.
Yeah. Looks like Andrew Cuneo has evened up his match against Owen Turtenwald. They're a game apiece now.
Well, Cuneo does have Crucible and 4 Tectonic Edge after board, so
seems pretty good against Tron.
So it looks like Paul is going to drop Tasigur, even though that taps him out of Mana Leak this turn. So that's interesting. Given that Josh has Faithless Looting in the graveyard, if I were Paul, I might be tempted to wait on the Tasigur. Though this does speed him up by a turn unless he casts a bunch of spells. So that there's definitely an upside to doing it this way.
Manamorphose and Gitaxian Probe are the cards on the
And
Visions.
both of which are good, but neither of which Josh already has in his graveyard. So
They're not.
the Pyromancer Ascension's not going off quite yet.
Visions of Beyond is the card in Josh's hand now.
Which, if Josh has 20 cards in his graveyard, currently he's on 8. He's about to go to 9. So
Yeah, not quite.
Might go back to 8 when he flashes back looting, which then puts him back up to 10. And so here, just discarding lands here. Could discard one land and keep like Thought Scour Manamorphose, but yeah, that does give you a bunch of extra. Since you're only going to get one more turn, you know that keeping one of the lands does give you, and basically 2 mana. So I could see discarding, definitely discarding one Flooded Strand for sure, and discarding one of the cantrips that is not Thought Scour, like either discarding Visions or Manamorphose here.
Wow, that was quick. Owen Turnwald wins 2-1.
Well, if you play a turn 3 Karn, you're going to win the game in like a minute and a half.
So Josh does decide to keep the 1 land.
Let's get an island, presumably cast Thought Scour. And then next turn, Josh has, he needs to go off with this Pyromancer Ascension. Milled a Manamorphose. All right, so Josh is going to get his draw step plus whatever he hits off Manamorphose, which is going to flip Ascendancy. So then Ascension. So then he's got some more. Oh, and so now this is even better. So now he can leave the Thought Scour
first. Double the Manamorphose, so he gets mana. He's actually able to pay for Mana Leak if he plays that land.
And well, it's going to come into play tap because it's the Seacrum.
Oh, my bad. So this Manamorphose is going to run into Mana Leak, and then it's game over?
Well, one copy is. That you get a second copy no matter what. So Mana Leak is going to stop one of them, but Josh is going to end up with 4 mana at the end of this if Paul chooses to Mana Leak. And if Paul chooses to Mana Leak, then Josh actually has the what he has to take as a path to just play Ascendancy, get back Fate Stitcher, and go off with the 2 cards from Manamorphose. Or 1 card, actually, because Paul, I think there's a good chance Paul Mana Leaks one of these. Though, because not Mana Leaking, I think, is slightly better if you know Josh's hand. If you don't, it still makes sense, though, because Josh goes up to 6 mana, but can't cast Jeskai Ascendancy and pay for Mana Leak and get Fate Stitcher back. So this is a decision point for Paul. He only gets to make. Paul has 1 decision left, or 1 total decision left this turn, which is what do I use Mana Leak on? He's got 1 bullet left, and he's got to spend it on the right threat. This is a guaranteed counter. If you wait, you won't necessarily be able to counter something. It's a pretty tough decision. I'm not going to say it's easy.
Oh, Simian Spirit Guide.
That kind of does it, because Josh can play Jeskai
He can play Ascendancy, he can pay for Mana Leak, and he can still bring back Fate Stitcher.
And then he can untap a land, then cast Visions, which...
Is he at 20? No, he's at not quite.
He's at 18, and he's going to go to 17 once he gets Fate Stitcher back. But he's going to draw 2 cards off the Visions plus... Well, actually, it's going to trigger Ascendancy. No,
so
it doesn't...
3 cards off the Visions.
Yeah, I'm trying to see if the Ascendancy...
If the second copy sees 20 cards.
Yeah, well, one of the copies of the Visions see 20. So the copy resolves first, so does the Ascendancy trigger.
The original. Crazy. All right, so here's Mana Leak on Jeskai Ascendancy. Josh needs to... He has to exile a Spirit Guide to pay so that he'll have blue mana left for the Fate Stitcher. He knows that.
Josh actually might be in...
I feel like he's in the same situation he was in game 1, where he's going to draw 2 cards and he needs to not miss.
And he gets 3 this time, actually, right? So.
Oh, you're right. This time it's 3 cards, and we had him as a slight favorite when he was only drawing 2.
Which he probably wasn't. He was actually probably an underdog because drawing 1 doesn't mean a win. It just means he gets to keep going. Sure. So but right now, Josh may actually be in good shape. He's gonna have 17 cards after he gets Fate Stitcher back. So yeah, he's not gonna be able to draw the 3 cards off the Visions, but he's drawing 1 off the Visions, 1 off the copy of Visions, and get the Ascendancy loot.
All right, here you see the engine. Fate Stitcher unearthed. Makes a mana every time you play a cantrip, and all the cantrips in this deck are 1-mana cantrips, so he just has to keep stringing them together for a while. Eventually needs to hit a Spirit Guide so he can get to 2 mana for Manamorphose, and then he's got all the mana he'll ever need. All right, 1 land, so 1 brick.
At some point, he could also hit another
Jeez.
Fate Stitcher.
Second brick. Oh, right, second Fate Stitcher turns him a profit also. But he's 0 for 2, last chance.
Here it is. Oh, there we go. Serum Visions. We get to keep going. And not only keep going, Josh has to be a favorite now, right? He gets to
scry.
Yeah, he gets to loot and then resolve. Actually, he can choose to resolve a Serum Visions, the copy, and then loot, and then resolve the original Serum Visions. So, given that, I would say if Josh's deck can't win from this position, then it's going to be problematic.
Wisps. So the draw was a land, but he put 2 cantrips on top, presumably.
So not a whiff, a wisps.
yes, sorry.
No, you said it right.
But wisps.
If Josh was playing Cerulean Wisps, the blue one, he would be able to generate mana off like untapping Fate Stitcher, but the white one is the more defensive one, which makes sense for Josh's deck. It's funny because this deck used to just play Cerulean Wisps, the deck that chose to play that, but Josh is going with the Niveus version.
All right, 1-mana cantrip, same deal. He's going to get to draw twice. He's going to get to make mana off the Fate Stitcher. Well, he's going to get the mana back that he needs to keep going off the Fate Stitcher. Either an additional Fate Stitcher or a Spirit Guide Manamorphose combo can get him more mana.
Or a Gitaxian Probe, actually.
Oh, yeah. Gitaxian Probe makes a mana.
Yeah, Josh has a lot of outs to get mana in. And blockers don't help. Josh gets to tap them all down with Wisps. He can also at some point use extra Fate Stitcher activations to tap blockers.
Yeah, and he just hit a Fate Stitcher, discarding it off the loot ability from Jeskai Ascendancy, so...
the Spirit token now gets dyed white here by the Niveus Wisps.
So now it's just a matter of getting a 10-power Fate Stitcher, or bringing a second one back and getting them to 10 total power. And he's got the draw 3 turned on.
Yeah, Josh can't miss here, so...
Yeah, sorry. It's now draw 6 that's turned on, of course. Josh Utter-Leyton, ladies and gentlemen.
Paul's sitting here like, how did he string this together?
I don't think Paul did anything wrong.
No, he got in the ring against Raptor. I mean, many people have made that mistake. No. No, Paul's draw was quite good, but Thoughtseize doesn't stop them from drawing a good card, and Mana Leak doesn't fight against Pyromancer Ascension all that effectively.
Yep, all true.
Sideboarding,
Brad and Jerry are still in game 1.
I'm glad we didn't hold them.
Yeah, no, I was not gonna hold them. That matchup is Abzan versus Jund.
Yeah.
So Brad's been playing a lot of Abzan in Modern. I know that he's got a Star City Games Invitational coming up that he's going to need to be playing Modern at. So this is the list he's been specializing in. But Jerry knew that.
Modern in it. That's awesome.
Yeah. Yeah, no, they're in V. It's not this weekend, but it's the weekend after Vegas. So it's half Standard, half Modern.
Gotcha.
And Jerry, I feel like Jund is pretty good against Abzan. I mean, he didn't go all the way to the Dragons to kill all the tokens, but...
No, I'm taking a look at I've got Jerry's deck open here, and he's got a bunch of Kolaghan's commands. Those give you some pretty good late game.
Yeah.
He's been liking this card. Jerry's been streaming a lot with this deck, which is pretty awesome.
Mm-hmm.
I'm a fan of more people streaming. I've been watching a lot of streams lately, and it is good times.
Yeah, Leyline of the Void has been getting noticed. The Kolaghan's command. So yeah, there's Jerry's Jund. No, it doesn't go all the way to Thunderball Hellkites. I feel like the Hellkite can actually kill the Lingering Souls tokens and give you an even more edge here. Maybe that's just a little greedy. I think I saw Reed Duke had that in a list a couple of months ago. But yeah, Brad's Abzan is interesting in that he has no Rhinos.
Wow.
Yeah, he's got 4 Lingering Souls, but no Sea Trinos. 3 Tassigers.
Interesting, and 4 Feed the Clans in the sideboard. He is going deep on Feed the Clan.
Yeah, I don't know if we can put Brad's deck up real quick. But yeah, I haven't seen it update. Pretty sure those guys are still in game 1, grinding it out. But meanwhile, we have a game 3 for you. Let us get down to game 3 between Paul Cheon and Josh Utter-Leyton. That was the wrong match.
There was a Tarmogoyf there.
I think it was actually a game. Yeah, Jerry just went up a game. That was the beginnings of game 2 between Brad and Jerry. All right, slight technical difficulties. We'll be right back. We're not going to let Josh and Paul play without you guys, so they're going to hold.
Of course not.
We will definitely get a look at that. Yeah, the Brad's list and Jerry's list, both pretty interesting. And it is, of course, 8 different decks. If you haven't looked at the deck list yourself. And
7, actually.
Oh, 7 different decks. My bad.
Yeah, somehow Tom Ross decided to play Tron, which to my knowledge he has not done so before. But, you know, it's good to expand your range. We were just talking about that in the Skype channel before we started. And playing Tron seems like a pretty good way to catch people by surprise, especially if they think, oh yeah, Tom Ross is going to play Infect. And the cards that are good against Infect, they're not good against Tron.
How much do you think that has to do with knowing your first round opponent is Brian Kibler?
That I think makes sense. And I think, you know, looking at Red-Green Tron against Brian Kibler's Green-White deck, Brian does not have a ton of disruption. He's got just Green-White creatures. You know, this is a Naya Zoo deck with Collected Company. And I don't even know if Brian has a card in the 75. Oh, no, he's got 4 Fulminators. All right. Fulminator Mage helps. That's clearly one of your best cards against Tron. Just one of the best cards in the format against Tron. Yeah, every other card is not awesome against Tron.
Now, the good news for him, I guess, is that the Pyroclasms don't kill much.
That is true. They kill just mana creatures, but there are not tons of those.
Right. He's on, what, 4 Hierarch, 1 bird? All right, looks like we're ready. Paul and Josh have been standing, waiting patiently. Now let's watch game 3. Will it be Grixis Delver into the semis and Paul Cheon staying in playoff position, or will it be Josh?
And it looks like Paul kept a hand without a ton of lands. He went turn 1 probe, Thoughtseize, turn 2 go.
Wow, so he got the Thoughtseize and Ascendancy, but...
And he does have Spell Snare up, so it'd be interesting to see if Josh goes for the Pyromancer Ascension. Given that Paul isn't doing anything, I could see just saying go here pretty easily.
Makes sense. Yeah, he does. He just says go.
Ooh. Probe is great, though. If Paul can draw an untapped land off this probe, Paul's at 9 already. Then Paul can play a Tasigur and still have Spell Snare up. If Josh just draws 2 more bolts, he could just win the game.
Yeah, he obviously did board in Lightning Bolt.
And Paul knows about the Pyromancer Ascension, so he's got incentive to not just play Tasigur here. But he's just going to run it. He figures just passing with mana up, doing nothing is just not a great idea. Thing is, even if Josh plays Ascension, he's not very close to doing anything with it.
Fair. Another land for Josh.
It's funny. It'd be funny if Paul doesn't draw a land and Josh gets a Fate Stitcher out. We could see Fate Stitcher just holding off Tasigur.
Seems like Lightning Bolt will have a thing or two to say about that.
Oh, so it looks like Josh did have a probe. That does help. It also means that there's no way Josh was ever running into that Spell Snare.
There we go. There's the rest of Josh's hand. Another land.
Josh has a lot more lands than Paul does.
He's been flooded both game 1 and game 3.
Well, he got out of it pretty nicely in game 3. Paul drew another pain land here. You know, I wouldn't be surprised if playing Pyromancer was decent here. As painful as that is.
Pay 2 Pyromancer, right? Doesn't he kind of have to? What's he going to do? Leave up Spell Snare, Flash Freeze?
There's just nothing to counter. I mean, there's a Jeskai Ascendancy gets countered by Flash Freeze exactly, but I don't know if you get a whole lot of mileage by leaving it up. On the other hand, Pyromancer doesn't increase the clock by all that much when you have 2 bolts in your hand. So because you're still just hitting with Tassiger 3 more times and bolting twice, hopefully. Whereas taking a turn off to play Pyromancer doesn't do a ton. But we'll find out. Looks like Magic Online has
Yeah, looks like
encountered a
Magic
problem.
Online is crashing. We will be back. Sorry about that. So, what are their odds of winning this game at this point, do you think?
It's mostly going to be on on Josh. There's not a whole lot Paul can draw to affect the outcome. Like, Paul can draw a counterspell or something, but even Hand Disruption's not going to be all that good because Josh is just going to play what he gets off the top of his deck. So if Josh can draw a couple cantrips, Josh is going to win the game. You know, he has to at some point find Ascendancy, but if he flips Ascension, that works too. If he goes and gets 2 counters on it, I would say that Josh looks favored from this position, but honestly, it's not like a gimme. There's Josh could just brick. He doesn't get a ton of extra draws. Tasker does attack for a good amount of damage.
Yeah, between Tassiger and the 2 lightning bolts, it feels like he's only got a couple of draw phases. So once again, it's that, okay, 2-3 draw phases, got to hit.
And in this particular case, Josh is short an Ascendancy and a way to get Fate Stitcher into the graveyard. Obviously, Ascendancy does both those things, but there's no, Faithless Looting. None of that is there. So there's even a chance that if Paul can just leave up Flash Freeze enough of the time. Actually, now that we have more time to think about this play, I kind of like leaving up Flash Freeze just because your Tasker is going to kill Josh in like 3 hits. And if Josh doesn't resolve an Ascendancy or Ascension, it's going to be really hard for him to win. An Ascendancy, rather. So these cards are too similar to each other. But if Paul can keep Josh off of that, Pyromancer or Ascension, it's not going to do it. It doesn't produce infinite mana. It needs to hit Manamorphose for that. So it looks like Paul passed with his untapped Steam Vents, leaving up
He did
Bolt.
pay the life, but he did not tap it for mana.
Leaving up Bolt and Flash Freeze. Josh is now probably just going to play a Fate Stitcher.
Yeah, why not? 4 mana, tap your Tassiger. That works.
Yeah, which means Paul's going to want to bolt at end of turn here. Just because you can't let the Fate Stitcher tap down Tassiger every turn, otherwise you just can never win.
Yeah.
And Paul's graveyard is empty. Snapcaster Mage not really up to speed right now.
There's about to be a lightning bolt.
True. And if Paul draws a 3rd land, that's actually not that bad here either, because then he can leave up Snapcaster, Bolt, or Flash Freeze, or Spell Snare, or all of the above. But I have a hard time not using my mana in turn here if I'm Paul. What Paul really needs is a way to exile.
Yeah, true. 3 red spells and only the 1 red source. It seems like he just bolt end step. Yeah, he does.
Yeah.
Tassiger.
Don't really want Pyromancer here, so Paul isn't going to be able to win next turn, even if he draws a land, because he can bolt down to 8, attack down to 4, Snapcaster bolt down to 1. But he does put Josh on a clock, and Josh at this point is going to start cycling, but his graveyard's not very stocked, and he doesn't have Jeskai Ascendancy.
And there's 0 counters on the Ascension.
Yeah.
No doubles in hand. Yeah. But he's got to start cycling.
He does have Niveus Wisp, though. That card does buy Josh a turn here.
Got it. So you're just going to leave that up, do that in Paul's attack. It basically, bolt, snap, bolt. Does it buy a full turn?
Well, if you bolt on the 8, you untap, you get tapped down. I guess it doesn't buy a full turn, but Josh doesn't know about the 2 more bolts coming necessarily. He knows about some number of them because of Probe, but
yeah, it does buy a full turn if Paul never draws the 3rd land.
Right. Though I think if you're Paul, you toss out another bolt here in a turn. It seems like, though it does. You could leave it up to try to bolt Fate Stitcher, which works on like the marginal hands where Josh has to get it out without doing anything. Or you could just play Snapcaster. Actually, that seems reasonable too. You don't have to. This way, you don't have to count on a 3rd land.
Sure.
Josh can, of
Paul's
course,
now got 6 power versus an opponent at 11. Makes sense.
Paul's still not doing a whole lot here. The Pyromancers in his hand are never going to get cast. It's unlikely Snapcaster does a whole lot. He does have Flash Freeze, so he's kind of banking on that 1 card.
Josh draws a 2nd Pyromancer's Ascension. That doesn't do anything. Wow, he just has to bolt Snapcaster here?
I think so. If you don't bolt Snapcaster, you go to 9, then you get attacked with both and you die to a lightning bolt. So if you're going to do that, you might as well just bolt it now.
Yeah, this buys a whole turn.
So Josh just needs to draw spells. If he draws spells, he's in good shape.
Ugh.
And it's tough too because Manamorphose is the card you want to cast after Ascension has gone off, not before, because it's the one that generates mana. No, none of your other cards generate mana. So it's kind of rough. I do think if Josh wants to cast Manamorphose here, I guess he could wait a turn. It costs 0 mana to Manamorphose. The advantage of casting it now is that you get to cast and flashback Faithless Looting, but I guess Josh is just on the plan of play Ascension, play a land, pass. Presumably Josh does have 2 turns here. So
yeah, it's hard to imagine him. What, he gets take 6 after the Snapcaster, so it would take 2 bolts. It's hard.
land is decent for Paul. He would rather draw. Well, I mean, I guess Deprive doesn't really do anything. You already have Flash Freeze, so yeah, land is fine. You get to cast Spell Snare and Flash Freeze in the same turn. You're definitely Spell Snaring Manamorphose. So Josh is in a lot of trouble here.
Yep.
Josh really needs to draw, like, actually Faithless Looting. If he draws Ascendancy, it just gets Flash Freeze, and then Manamorphose gets Spell Snared. If he draws Looting, at least he's got a chance to draw multiple things.
How about Scalding Tarn?
I don't think Scalding Tarn's going to do it, is my guess. Josh
No, I
is
don't
the
think
master of the terrain here. And I find it very implausible that Paul would not Spell Snare this. If Paul doesn't, then Josh does have a shot, but it's not a great shot still.
No, you still got to get through Spell Snare and Flash Freeze. Yeah, Spell Snare your Manamorphose, and that looks an awful lot like 6 power versus 5 life. Yep, Paul Cheon wins.
So our numbers 1 and 2 seeds have won both their matches.
True story. Yeah, Owen and Paul. Now, Josh's deck, I feel like his draws were kind of mediocre. I mean, the deck looked
They were abysmal.
His draws were all the way at miserable.
I would say so. It wasn't that Josh's initial draws were bad. It's that he never drew like cantrips, and that's what the deck is basically made up of. So you never really got to see the deck do what it was supposed to do.
We saw it in game 2. I feel like we got to see it go off once.
No, it did successfully go off, but he kind of had to string that together too. I feel like the deck isn't going to operate on those margins quite as often as it did in this match.
Yeah, it felt like he got himself into a position where he was pretty close to going off in all 3 games, and it only came together once, whereas, 3 games, I mean, obviously super small sample size, but you'd expect there to be 1 game where you just kind of have it all.
Right.
And then there's one on the edge, and then maybe it fizzles. I don't know. Cool deck. I certainly enjoyed. I will admit, I loaded it up and goldfished it a little bit. The solitaire format on Magic Online was my friend.
Yeah,
maybe Swiss turns out to be not quite as good when you're playing solitaire, though.
Yeah, that one seems a little harder to get. You're going to have to like sub in some other cantrip here.
Right. You may or wait until you have a Fate Stitcher in play. That makes it a little bit worse. In any case, Josh Utter-Leyton comes up short. Paul Cheon moves to the second round. We can actually look at the bracket while we get our other match loaded up for you guys. The match that we have saved is Brian Kibler, who's playing a Naya Zoo deck because